Welcome to Newsbeacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Hey everyone, Chris here for Newsbeacon. Today, we're diving into the changing face of the American auto industry. Detroit's factories, once the heart of U.S. manufacturing, now stand eerily quiet, monuments to a different era. The reasons are complex, but a major factor is the tariffs imposed during the Trump administration. These tariffs, meant to protect American jobs, actually raised costs for U.S. car makers. As a result, production slowed, jobs were cut, and investment began shifting north to Canada. How did a policy designed to revive American industry end up fueling silence in Detroit and growth in Canada? Let's find out. Let's start with Ford, an icon of American cars. When tariffs hit, Ford's global supply chain was thrown into chaos. Steel and aluminum costs soared, slashing profits by an estimated $1 billion. Ford responded by cutting overtime, slowing production, and canceling new models like the Focus Active for the U.S. market. Instead of boosting American jobs, the tariffs led to fewer choices for consumers and less work for factory employees. The River Rouge complex in Dearborn, once a symbol of industrial might, faced shift reductions and delayed investments. Ford's leadership began to look beyond U.S. borders for cost savings. The integrated North American supply chain, with Canada and Mexico, became more attractive. If it was cheaper to build parts or cars in Canada, business logic prevailed. The result, a strategic shift in production, with Canada emerging as a key player. The promise of revitalized American manufacturing faded, replaced by anxiety and uncertainty for Ford's U.S. workforce. The tariffs, intended to bring jobs home, instead forced Ford to rethink where and how it builds cars. The story of Ford is a clear example of how well-intentioned policies can have unexpected, far-reaching consequences. The company's focus shifted to efficiency and survival, not expansion in the U.S. As Ford streamlined, the ripple effects were felt across the industry. This set the stage for a broader re-evaluation of North American auto production. Now to General Motors, where the impact was even more dramatic. Tariffs drove up costs for every vehicle, from Silverados to Cadillacs. GM responded with a sweeping restructuring, closing plants like Detroit Hamtramck and Lordstown, cutting thousands of union jobs. Ironically, a policy meant to protect jobs triggered one of the largest auto layoffs in years. GM cited tariffs as a key reason for shifting investment to Canada, pouring hundreds of millions into plants like Kami and Oshawa. Canadian operations offered stability and a way to avoid tariff volatility. For U.S. workers, it felt like betrayal. Jobs vanished at home while investment flowed north. Protests erupted, but GM stood firm, adapting to a new economic reality. The silence in Detroit's plants became a symbol of this painful pivot. Instead of a manufacturing fortress, tariffs accelerated GM's retreat from some U.S. operations. Canada became the unexpected winner, as GM's strategy shifted north. The empty spaces in U.S. factories told the story of tough choices in a changing world. Chrysler, now Stellantis North America, faced its own challenges. Already operating on thin margins, tariffs on steel and aluminum hit hard. Ram trucks and Jeep SUVs became more expensive to build, squeezing profits. Chrysler avoided massive closures but quietly shifted focus to its Canadian plants in Brampton and Windsor. As U.S. operations grew costlier, Canadian facilities became strategic assets. The company cut shifts in the U.S. while Canadian plants remained stable. The tariffs nudged Chrysler to rely more on its North American network, especially Canada. For U.S. workers, the shift was subtle but unsettling. Future investments increasingly favored Canada. Chrysler's story is one of adaptation, avoiding headlines but gradually reducing its American footprint. The foundation was laid for a future where Canada played a bigger role. The intended boost for U.S. industry instead fueled a quiet migration north. The tariffs didn't just hit Detroit, they shook up Tesla too. Tesla's U.S. factories rely on global supply chains, making them vulnerable to rising steel, aluminum, and electronics costs. Tariffs on Chinese components created a supply chain shock, raising costs and complicating production. Elon Musk publicly criticized the policy, arguing it hurt American innovation. Tesla scrambled to localize suppliers, but building new U.S. factories for advanced parts was slow and costly. The trade war pushed Tesla to expand globally, leading to the Shanghai Gigafactory. By building cars in China for the Chinese market, Tesla sidestepped tariffs. The result, future growth and investment shifted outside the US. The tariffs didn't move Tesla to Canada, but they did force a global rethink. Tesla's experience showed how national policies can drive companies to diversify production worldwide. The lesson in a global industry: protectionist policies can backfire, sending jobs and investment abroad. Even America's most innovative automaker wasn't immune. The modern auto industry is more interconnected and more fragile than ever. Foreign automakers like Toyota were caught in the tariff crossfire too. Toyota's US plants in Kentucky, Indiana, and Texas faced soaring material costs. The company warned that tariffs would raise prices or cut profits, threatening its competitive edge. Toyota's Canadian plants in Cambridge and Woodstock became increasingly important. As US costs rose, Canada's relative stability made it a hub for key models like the RAV4. Toyota didn't close US factories, but future investment shifted north. The company's North American strategy became a balancing act, cutting costs in the US while expanding in Canada. For American workers, the impact was subtle. More competition with Canadian plants, tighter budgets, and a sense of uncertainty. The tariffs, meant to help US workers, made their Canadian counterparts more competitive. Toyota's story highlights the complexity of modern manufacturing, where borders blur and business follows stability. The company's commitment to the US remained, but the growth story was increasingly Canadian. The delicate balance between US and Canadian operations became the new normal. The unintended consequence: Canada's auto sector gained ground as the US faced new headwinds. Honda's experience echoed Toyota's. Tariffs on steel and aluminum disrupted Honda's efficient US operations, raising costs for popular models like the CR-V. Honda's Canadian plant in Alliston, Ontario, became a strategic asset. In response to tariffs, Honda designated Alliston as the global lead plant for the next-generation CR-V. This shift meant Canada, not the US, would drive innovation and investment for a key vehicle. The decision reflected Canada's stability and skilled workforce amid US trade uncertainty. For US workers, the move was unsettling. Future growth was heading north. The tariffs, intended to boost US manufacturing, instead made Canada more attractive. Honda's calculated adjustment was a direct response to the new economic landscape. The company's future strategy now leaned more heavily on its Canadian operations. The lesson: trade policy can quickly reshape where companies choose to invest and grow. Nissan, with major plants in Tennessee and Mississippi, also felt the tariff squeeze. Rising steel and aluminum costs hit their southern factories hard, just as the company was restructuring globally. Production cuts and layoffs followed, eroding job security. Unlike Toyota and Honda, Nissan lacked a large Canadian footprint, but the tariffs exposed the risks of relying too heavily on US production. The company began diversifying its supply chain and reconsidering future US investments. Tariffs made expanding American operations less attractive. Growth stalled, and the promise of new jobs faded. The build where you sell strategy was suddenly more complicated. Nissan's experience underscored how trade policy uncertainty can chill investment, even without a direct shift to Canada. The southern discomfort was real: higher costs, fewer jobs, and a clouded future. The lesson: even the most committed US manufacturers can be forced to rethink their strategy. Across the industry, a clear pattern emerged. Tariffs meant to protect US manufacturing instead raised costs, slowed production, and shifted investment north. Canada's auto sector gained as Detroit's factories fell silent. The story is a lesson in global interconnectedness and the unintended consequences of economic policy. The future of American manufacturing remains uncertain in a world where supply chains cross borders. What do you think? How should the US support its workers in a global economy? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching.